Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Young, Wild, and Rich podcast. This is episode number 85. Super excited to bring this episode to you. Before we dive into the show, make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify. It helps us reach more young professionals like yourself to expand the mission of helping young people find purpose, passion, and fulfillment in their careers. If you want to go above and beyond, you can leave us a review too. That helps a ton. And if you ever want to get connected, info@youngwildandrich.com. You can send us an email, or if you want to connect on social media, YWR Podcast. Who's my guest today for episode number 85? We are bringing on Robert Avril, better known as Crescendo, CRZNDO on social media. Robert is a classical pianist and piano teacher based out of Scottsdale, Arizona. He received his bachelor's degree in music as a summa cum laude as well in piano performance from the Herberger Institute for Design and Arts of Arizona State University in 2015. He also earned a certificate in audio technology from Mesa Community College. He's used both of these degrees to build a teaching studio of 55 weekly private piano students. He's also used his knowledge in audio technology to create music education based on content in his channels like Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And he's constantly striving to give his students the knowledge and techniques at piano so they can play the music they want to play it. That's a big thing for him, and something he continually impresses upon his students as a teacher. We're not only going to go back and talk about college and how he began his career as a performer, but we're also going to talk about how he shifted that as he got older to be a teacher full-time and how he grew this client base. So really good episode today. I'm extremely excited to bring this to you, and let's dive into my conversation with Robert Avril. Robbie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Of course, man. It's funny the world we live in because we got connected just through being online and someone of mutual interest in that person's Matt Gottesman. Shout out to Matt. Great guy, great human. And, through that connection, we ended up meeting. We're both people who are into creating content in different ways, and we'll definitely dive into that today with your story. And yeah, man, just super excited to have you on and talk about your story. I think it's a unique one for sure.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. And, it's been, like you said, it's been kind of crazy how, things can just kind of fall together online and you end up meeting people and making connections. And, shout out to Matt again, being a great dude. And yeah, it's been pretty amazing.
And this is your first podcast interview, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So this is my first time ever being interviewed for a podcast, but very excited.
See, and this is why I love doing this, man. Like, I'm not chasing the super successful 50-year-old millionaire who's made it to distill all his secrets or her secrets of success. It's the young people on their journey just doing something they love. And I think you fall into that category very well. And you exemplify that type of young, wild, and rich mindset of someone who enjoys what they do every single day. So let's dive into that. Where we start is always college. So tell us a little bit about that. Did you go to college? If so, where? What'd you major in?
So I attended Arizona State University.
Go Devils.
I went to, yes, go Devils. I went to the Herberger School of Music. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do going into college exactly. So about a year before, I had gone to a summer music camp. And previous to that, I thought I wanted to be a doctor or a radiologist or something in that nature in the medical field. But really loved the summer music camp that I went to and decided that that's what I wanted to do. So I ended up applying to a bunch of colleges. ASU was kind of almost my stretch college, but ended up getting in there because I had a connection with my professor who ended up studying with there. But yeah, went to ASU 4 years, graduated with my degree in piano performance, bachelor's degree. And yeah, I loved every second of it. It was quite the experience. So I really enjoyed my time while I was there.
I know you talked about going down that like doctor route. So did you get exposed to music later in your life, or were you already kind of into that when you were in high school and growing up? I'm just curious.
Oh, yeah. So I started piano when I was 5 years old.
Okay.
Kind of a funny story. My dad played the trumpet. He was a pharmacist, but I would always go with him as a little kid to go get his trumpet kind of tuned to the music store. My parents always thought I would be kind of inclined to go towards the drums. But at 5 years old, every time we would go to the music store, I went right into the keyboard. And I would go over to the keyboards and kind of bang around on them. I had no idea what I was doing. And so my parents decided after a little while, maybe maybe piano lessons would be something that was kind of cool. So they knew a piano teacher, and I started taking lessons, and it was something that I always just enjoyed doing. There were lots of things I played sports, I did other things, but piano was something, constant from 5 years old all the way to the end of high school, that I just always loved the challenge of it, always improving. And I really just loved music in general. So it was always something fun that I really enjoyed doing.
Very cool. And then for someone who is in this creative space of music as an art, as a profession, as someone who wants to actually pursue it and do it full time like you do up to this point in your career, would you recommend going to school and getting a degree, or are there other alternative routes? Like if you were sitting down with a young person and they were trying to, pick your brain because you're in something that they want to do, maybe it's a different instrument for that matter, but how would you share advice with them on that decision? And I know it's not easy.
Yeah. It's very much kind of, you have to be very committed to music. And a lot of it depends on what kind of genre of music you want to go into. So somebody who's looking to make, popular music or wants to be a recording artist, you can do that kind of on your own without having to go to college. My route, because I enjoyed playing classical piano, I was always looking for a professor to help me improve my piano skills. And so some of the top professors are at the university level. So I decided that that's kind of where I needed to be. But you could very easily not go to college and still take lessons from someone who, is a professor. There's different ins and outs of that. But it's really dependent on you. What do you think you need? And how far you want to go with it.
Yeah, and I guess too, to your point, it really depends on what you want to focus on.
Exactly.
Okay, that's interesting. And then, so looking back on that college experience from a personal experience as well as like a career experience, would you say it was really good? You learned a lot, and it's really helped you up to this point in regards to your skill set in the field that you are in with classical music?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I first went to ASU, my professor, we actually took a couple of steps backwards and started working on my piano technique and some different things, which was a little bit frustrating for me at first.
Okay.
But it was definitely something that I had to get through. And once I got through that, I, found exponential growth in my own playing ability. And it also opened up a lot of different doors for me as a musician. And I really learned a lot from all the people that I was able to meet there, whether it be other musicians, other professors. I had, various opportunities to work with other people at ASU, and work with other musicians. And I had a variety of performance opportunities, from performing in an international piano competition to debuting piano pieces by other composers at the school.
Wow.
So it was really an interesting time while I was there, and really enjoyed every second of it.
That's awesome. Was there a point in college where it could be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, where you made a decision in your mind and said, I think I can do this for like a career long term? Did you have that, or was it still just that exploratory phase? Because it's challenging, I think, for a lot of young people to pick a major or pick a focus and think, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But I know you fell in love with it. So I'm curious, when did that come into realization for you, if it did in college?
Right. So I think early on, I knew that I wanted to do music as a career. I just didn't know what the opportunities were or what the possibilities were. And kind of up until that point, maybe my only thought about it was that I would be a performer. So, I would be performing in different competitions. I'd be performing in concerts. And that was kind of my primary goal or focus.
Okay.
But some different things happened as I kind of went along, and I ran into some different things which kind of helped me pivot towards teaching, and really fell in love with that. So, it's really kind of, all about just being open to the different possibilities that you might have. So if you can kind of almost picture like the general field that you want to be in, and just kind of start immersing yourself in that, you can kind of begin to see what opportunities might be within that certain field. And that's kind of what happened for me. And I kind of was able to like cross out certain things. And like, oh, okay, that's not really something that I'm interested in anymore. Or, here's maybe a primary focus, while this other thing I can kind of put on the back burner for now. So, and again, music was kind of a more entrepreneurial kind of venture where you could do a bunch of different things at the same time, where I wasn't necessarily pigeonholed to doing just one thing forever. So that's something else that I like about it.
That's a great piece of advice too for someone who's younger or thinking about how to find a career in an industry. And like you said, you opened yourself up to saying, hey, this was the direction I was thinking I was going down, but then wait, there's actually other opportunities, in tasting those other opportunities. And like you said, like checking off the boxes of other things that you could potentially do, kind of building up to another question that I'm curious now, and maybe some other listeners are too. For this industry, what are the different types of routes you could go or opportunities that there would be for someone who wants to go into music, whether that's teaching or, being a composer, a performer? Like, what are all those opportunities?
I think that there's a variety of opportunities. I mean, you mentioned some of them there. Teaching is maybe the most accessible. If you can learn an instrument and you know it to a certain degree of proficiency, you can definitely help teach somebody that, and that kind of goes with any skill as well. There's lots of opportunities as far as performing. They might not always be paid opportunities, but they are definitely kind of skill and resource and reference based opportunities as well. And there's a lot of things kind of behind the scenes that I ended up getting into it because I graduated from ASU and then I ended up going to Mesa Community College to complete a degree in audio engineering. And that took me about 2 years. It was something that I had already been interested in. ASU didn't necessarily have a program for that at that time. But again, whenever I was in a recording studio for my own kind of piano, it felt like a spaceship to me. And I had no idea what it was. I didn't really know anything about it. I didn't know what any of the buttons or anything like that did. But I knew that I was interested enough that if I could find a program, whether it be online or through something else, and just learn, some of the basic things, that maybe I could, add that into kind of my palette of things that I could do. So there's the whole recording aspect of it. There's a lot of different things with the arts, whether it be, creation of, kind of artistic work to go along with musicians. And I think a lot of people are kind of under the impression that if you become a musician, you kind of have to be like the main star or the main person. But there's lots of opportunities for people out there to back up somebody, to play as like a background musician, a studio musician for someone. So there's lots of kind of different unique kind of niche areas. And I think that once you kind of find your niche, you can make something your specialty and then kind of build things around that complement that main skill.
And then with the audio engineering side, how tell us a little bit more about that and how it actually helped you, I guess, in regards to complementing what you learned at ASU and why someone might want to go and, get that additional education.
So one of the things that I really wanted to learn was how I could do it myself, because I'd been in recording studios and I had people record me, and I figured not necessarily that I need to eliminate the middleman, but if I can learn how to do it myself and just become somewhat proficient at it, then I can kind of do it from home and it'll make it more easy for me. So I went there with the intent of learning how to be able to record myself, just to be able to also be in like a music studio and just know for the general kind of terms what was going on. And I knew that at the end of it, I would have an internship, so I would have a chance to do some kind of real world kind of action. So today, I'm actually able to apply that skill to my students. So I record my students a lot. If any of my students need a recording, whether it be for a Christmas gift for friends or family, or a holiday gift, or they need to be recorded for a competition, I have the capability to do that. And that's, again, another skill that I can kind of have in my back pocket. And it also makes things a lot easier for me to get high quality recordings in case I want to record myself to put something on YouTube, if I wanted to record something for Instagram, or whatever the media outlet may be. I now have the capability to do that kind of from my own home. And I also can step into a music recording studio and at least feel knowledgeable enough to interact with people there and let them know, I can do this. I can kind of, I know what I'm doing here, in that kind of respect.
Yeah, it comes back to, with access to technology, tools, education, it gives the individual creator today the ability to kind of own the entire process of what they're doing.
Exactly.
So you can be the media company for your own self. You don't need to outsource all of these things. Rather, you can learn it and then you understand it, and you can also apply it and do it.
Right.
So you finish college, the audio degree you said that was 2 years, right?
Yeah, it was about 2 years. I had started teaching at that point, so I tried to kind of sprinkle it in with everything else that I was doing, but I was able to get it done in about 2 years.
Okay, so when you moved into doing that degree, you had already kind of figured out, I want to pursue teaching. I want to share what I've learned. I want to help other people get better. What was kind of the motivation behind that? It's always interesting because I love teaching too. I love sharing advice, knowledge around whatever. I mean, fitness was the first thing for me, and that's where I did that. But I'm always curious in terms of where that motivation comes from.
Teaching was kind of very coincidental for me. Like I said earlier, I always thought that I would be performing, and that would be my main aspect. So I went to an international piano competition and competed. It was in northern Italy at the end of my time at ASU. And that was a goal of mine that I had really strived and worked really hard towards getting to. And it was an amazing experience. I was able to meet people from all over the world at the competition. I thought I played really well, and was able to see different pianists and also, receive education and lessons from some of the very good, high quality piano teachers. But there was also an aspect to that made me a little bit uneasy about the performance, in the fact that at the highest level, everything really has to be perfect if you want a shot. And I had always strived for perfection. But sometimes it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And things can happen. You might be in a wrong mood one day and it doesn't happen. And, so that was a little bit disconcerting for me. I always wanted to feel very true to what I was doing as an artist. And if there were some mistakes, I didn't necessarily like the fact that could eliminate me from any kind of contention.
Right.
And, also at that level, you got to see really how much work people were putting in. I always remember that at that competition in particular, there was a 12-year-old prodigy. She practiced anywhere from 10 to 11 hours a day.
Wow.
She was homeschooled, but she loved it. And she was amazing. She was, a great person. Family was really nice.
Okay.
But I saw that and I kind of thought, is this what I want to do? Do I want to take 10 to 11 hours every day practicing? And practicing the piano for me was very much a solo activity. So it's, kind of in a room by yourself, practicing the piano, hammering away at things. And at that point, I was already practicing 5 to 6 hours. But I thought, is this something that I want to do every day? And at that point, I was committed to becoming the best that I could, but wasn't necessarily committed to practicing 10 to 12 hours a day. So coming back from that, I received an opportunity from a friend to substitute in, teach some of their students, because they were going to be out of town. And so I said, all right, yeah, sure. At that point, I was thinking, do I really want to work with kids? Do I really, here I am, 22, 21, do I want to spend time working with kids? I don't know if I'm going to like it. I wasn't sure, but I was like, all right, I'll try it out. What the heck? And so I started in with a couple of lessons and subbed for them for a couple of weeks. The company that I was, subbing for ended up hiring me, but there's a particular part to it that I really enjoyed. There wasn't so much pressure on me as a performer. Even though I enjoyed that pressure, it was kind of more fun for me to instill the knowledge and everything that I had learned to somebody else and help them learn and do what they wanted to. Because not everybody wants to be a classical pianist.
Right.
But if I can help somebody, take a step further towards playing their favorite pop song or playing that one classical piece that they wanted to, then that was a cool feeling for me. And so I kind of built on that feeling and kind of really liked it every time that I was teaching. And then that kind of just snowballed into going from there.
Yeah. And that, just hearing you talk about the side of being a performer and that word of perfection,
right.
That's a very difficult word today because it's so hard to be perfect. And especially pursuing anything, we're meant to go and like fall over our feet and make mistakes. But when you're talking about a craft like that, you have to be perfect. And
right.
that stress and that pressure and that anxiety, and you need to practice 11, 12 hours a day, maybe even more to
right.
maintain or just have a chance to be the best. that's really difficult to do. I know I couldn't do something like that.
Right.
I mean, no matter what it is, it's like 11, 12 hours a day, and that doesn't guarantee anything.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, it really came down to a level of self-awareness that I had, because I looked at that and I said, do I want to do that? And at the end of the day, as much as maybe sometimes I would sit there and say, yeah, this is what I want to do, sometimes it was no. Sometimes it was I don't want to do that, or
Right.
not to that extent, where it's different for everyone. And I think that everybody kind of has to ask themselves that question, when you're going into something of like, you're looking at the work ahead or the road ahead and kind of like, is this something that I'm willing to just really dive into? And you might not know it at that point, but I think that's a question that you have to kind of become familiar with asking yourself when you take on new things.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really difficult for people to do. Not only just expose yourselves to something that you're not sure that you want to do,
Right.
and then you have then the information and the result of, okay, this is for me or it's not for me. But then being able to, like you said, take a step back, ask yourself those questions. Do I see myself doing this in 3 years, 5 years? Do I see myself doing this? What else is there out there? And then, like you said, having the self-awareness to say, you know what, I don't know if this is for me, but I know there's a lot of different opportunities. I still want to be in this space. And maybe it's just not in front of an audience, having to be that perfect performer. And maybe I can, again, you got exposed to something else and you were able to go work with kids, and it opened up something that you'd never done before.
Right. And it's kind of funny too, because as a performer, and performers of sports or music on any level, you get that kind of excitement, that nervousness maybe before going out onto the court or the stage or whatever it may be. And of course I got that, before I would go out and perform. But now I get that same feeling almost more with my own students. So it's kind of interesting. You're never going to kind of escape any of those feelings, but sometimes they're just kind of transferred in different ways.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting.
And it's like you get to partner in that experience that you had for yourself with so many individuals.
Right.
It's not just you. It's you get to see how someone else is going on their journey so early on,
Right.
and then help influence that. And I mean, are the students that you work with today, is it focused really in that genre of classical music? That's like the focus?
For the most part, I'd probably say about 90% of my students are focused on classical. And even the ones who aren't necessarily focused on it, I still like to expose them to it.
Okay.
And so I try to expose my students to a variety of musical genres. So, I mean, even somebody that's primarily a classically trained student who wants to play classical music, I'll still expose them to jazz,
Okay.
or to, ragtime or different genres of music, just so they have a well-rounded kind of knowledge base, because you never know what music's going to throw at you. You really don't. You might have to go on stage and play something classical. You might have a friend that's doing, a bunch of pop songs at, a hotel. They're playing
Yep.
guitar or something, and you need to back them up. So I try to give people that kind of life skills type of knowledge so that they could be prepared for any situation, if that's what they're serious about doing.
So let's pivot to another topic I'm sure a lot of people are interested in, is you get this degree, you get to a certain level of competency. Let's say you do want to become a teacher. How do you break into actually getting students, having people where you can, train and make a living doing this? Like, what did that look like for you? I know you had that first experience where you were able to sub in, and then that created some other opportunities, but how did you build on top of that?
So I think it's really about being open to opportunities. I think at first you just have to get your foot in the door. So I was able to start working at the studio, but when I started doing more of things on my own, I actually started teaching one of my parents' neighbors' children. And so they had 2 kids. I started working with them. And at this point, I was still learning a lot about the whole teaching process, and was, trying to kind of find my way through doing it. Of course, I knew what I was doing at that point, but I didn't necessarily know the ins and outs.
Yeah.
But sometimes it can be as simple as an ask. So I asked the family, and maybe I didn't even ask them. I think maybe I just mentioned to them one time, I have more openings for teaching. If you know any friends or anyone that's interested in piano lessons, here's my business card. You can just let them know that I'm available. And so they ended up passing it to a few people. and then the network just kind of grew from there.
Yeah.
I mean, I see about 55 students privately for one-on-one lessons a week at this
Wow.
point. So it's pretty big, but I still have, a couple people on a waiting list, but it was literally just references, just referrals from people that I already said, and I think a lot of people are kind of nervous to ask people like, would you refer me to somebody else? But I think if you take that step and just let people know, hey, I've got more time to work with, whatever it may be, that people are more than willing to spread the word about you, especially if they've already been working with you and they know you as a person. And I think it just kind of spread from there.
Yeah. And that's a really good point too, where if you get really good at what you're doing and you're doing a good job for someone and you're providing a result that they enjoy, people want to share that with someone else. They just need the opportunity to know that they can share that. And if you never ask them, then you're never going to get it. It's like if you buy something and you love it, what's the thing that you do? You go and tell your friend, like, dude, you got to check this out. You got to go to this site. You got to go. It's like that. It's just a referral, right? But it's from someone that you know. And again, there's so many parents out there who have kids who are in arts, and they're like, I took piano lessons growing up. Like a lot of people did. I took guitar lessons growing up, all that other stuff. So I think it is so simplistic, but it's just actually asking and believing in what you're actually doing and being confident in saying, hey, I have other, openings and love to work with more kids if you guys know anyone. And they know 10, 20 other families too. Right.
And for me too, like at first, because it took me, a year and a half to actually get the quantity of students. Okay. But for me, it was just at the beginning, it was just about saying yes. If somebody had somebody that they wanted, to learn how to play piano, then yes, absolutely, I will go teach them. At their house, whether it was me going to them coming to there, I would figure out a way to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I figured the more times that I could put myself in the situation of teaching, just the better that I would become.
Yeah.
Just like straight repetition. So, of course you're going to learn things along the way, but I figured the more that I could teach, the more that I'll become comfortable with doing it and kind of find my own process with different things and kind of go from there.
What's the biggest thing that you've learned over this time of being a teacher that's helped you? I know, again, you get really good at a craft, but then you have to learn the other side of it, which is teaching someone else. So what has been maybe the biggest lesson in that experience of going from the performer to the teacher that you've had to learn and like get really good at for the students' benefit as, you continue to do this?
I think it's kind of two things. I think one thing is patience. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is being willing to kind of relearn. So the first thing that I mentioned, patience, not everyone learns at the same speed. So as a teacher, when I was starting with it, I expected kind of, blindly, but I expected people to kind of learn at the pace that I wanted them to.
Right.
So
this is how I learned.
Right.
So,
Exactly. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give you these pieces. I'll come back next week and I'm expecting them to be learned.
Yeah.
So, sometimes I'll come back, maybe somebody worked really hard and practiced and it just didn't click. And so I got to, try a new approach or something new. Some things might have come up with the child's schedule. Mm-hmm. They didn't have a whole lot of time to practice, so I have to deal with that. So I think it's, patience of not everybody's going to learn everything you want them to right away or at the speed that you want them to. And I think that that's one of the big things. The second thing for me was that because I started at 5 years old, I couldn't remember anything from like my early lessons. Right. So, me having to teach somebody who's never played the piano before, the experiences of me doing that was so far in the rearview mirror that I had to do some research on the outside of saying like, okay, like how do I actually teach someone to play the piano? Like, where do I start? What do I need to do? Mm-hmm. So that was also kind of a big challenge. And you have to be, again, you have to be willing to be flexible and to adapt to different people's learning processes and everything like that. So it is always a process and everybody is going along that road a little differently.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. It's like you were saying too on that second point, stepping into the shoes of where that person is in their life. And it's hard because you have to go back to what happened actually when I was there.
Right.
And how was I actually, learning and going through this process. So you today, you're working with a ton of students. It's awesome. Like you've been able to create a full-time profession out of this, which is amazing. Like that's what I hope for any single person listening to this. Whether it's what you're doing in the arts, or from a teacher's perspective, or it's a career that you just absolutely love because it's centered around your interests and skills. What other things do you do? Because I know you have a YouTube channel, so I'd like to know some of because I know there's other ways that you put your material out there and try to help educate. Because again, the one-to-one is great, but the one-to-many with YouTube and all that other stuff, like what are some of the other things that you do when you do have time outside of teaching?
So I like to spend a lot of time still practicing my own works and kind of doing things like that. But like you said, I have an Instagram page where I really enjoy kind of reaching out to people across the world. I'll post content of things that I find helpful for my students. So, kind of on a weekly basis, I might jot down a few things that work for me in lessons.
Okay.
And I might then put out a video on that. And I've had people ask me questions about certain things. They say, oh, I'm doing this at the piano. What could I do to make it better? I'm looking for a method book. For me, I've had people reach out saying, I'm trying to teach myself the piano. Where do I start?
Yeah.
Or, what method book can I grab? Or, different things like that. So I think a lot of it for me was just listening to the pain points of other people and what people are struggling with, and then trying to kind of create content for them. Again, not necessarily, I wasn't charging for any of it, but I just enjoyed helping people and helping them figure out kind of where to go. So I did that. I also do some recording and things like that on the side. I'm working a lot on kind of piano covers for other genres of music I really enjoy, like EDM music. I enjoy some hip hop. So a lot of times when I'm listening to that, I can hear somebody playing a piano in it, or you can hear, one of the most famous Dr. Dre beats has the piano in it. So, I mean, there's lots of things that I can hear the piano in and say, oh, okay, that's cool. I want to learn that. And so, I can go back, learn it, put it out. And then again, if people have questions like, oh, how did you do that? Where did you find the, sheet music or whatever for it? Then I can point them in the right direction and help somebody else learn the same thing.
I love that. And that's why I wanted to ask you it too, because that's really what you do when it comes to everything you do outside of like what people see on the one-on-one level and the teaching level. You really love the craft, and outside of teaching and educating your students, you're also practicing, you're also getting better at it. And then you're also sharing that. You're sharing the things that you learn. Like that's the coolest thing about, I think, social media and just like the landscape of learning something and then being able to like pass it on to someone else and then be able to collaborate on that. Like you said, reaching out to other people, connecting, like that's such a cool aspect of this whole thing. What other things do you want? Like, are there any other things that you're thinking about creating going forward? I mean, being a teacher, there's a lot of opportunities, but again, you only have so much time, right? You can only see so many students one-on-one. Are there any other like projects you're thinking about maybe releasing in the future, whether that's like a specific series on a specific, because I'm sure even for me, if I was like talking to you all the time and I heard a piano lesson, I'd be like, hey, how do I play this, right? Like, because everyone wants to be able to like do that in some capacity or another. But a long-winded question asked a little bit shorter is just, are you thinking about anything else from like a creative perspective in what you're doing right now today?
Absolutely. I'm kind of in the process of even writing like an ebook for beginners.
Okay.
Even creating an online course for beginners as well. Because I think that one of the things is that with classical music or with music lessons in general, sometimes there is a price barrier.
Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, you're going to take lessons from somebody who's professional, and not everybody is always flexible either. Right. I mean, a lot of times it's kind of like a personal trainer, right? If you were to commit to a personal trainer, they might want to see you every week.
Yeah.
But you might not be able to go every week, or you might have, work commitments or time commitments that wouldn't allow you to do that. So I'm trying to kind of create a do-it-yourself kind of method where people could still have access to me as a teacher, but more kind of on their own time.
Okay.
As me being kind of maybe more as like oversight kind of thing. So whether it be an ebook or an online course where you might have access to me as a teacher if you have questions, or you want to, post something that you've been working on, an assignment that I've kind of created. I'm kind of exploring the realm of that opportunity, and also, putting in a little bit of work towards putting something out there like that.
Yeah. And I mean, that makes a lot of sense too, just because, again, you only have so much time and people have only so much time too. And that's really like the day and age we live in right now. It's, hey, how can I get something like really quick? How can it be accessible and easy? But then at the same time with music, you have to figure out the best way to deliver it so it works for someone, because there is that personal level of education that you need too. I mean, you went to school, you were working with someone one-on-one, you were working with multiple teachers and professors to really hone that craft in. So you've already seen that for yourself. Right. And now you're getting that experience one-on-one, but then it's like, what potentially could the future look like in terms of you being able to educate thousands of young people who are trying to get good at the piano?
Exactly. Yeah. And even during this time that we're in, since you're interviewing me during the whole COVID-19, I found that kind of even more. I mean, people have reached out to me just because people have more time on their hands at this point. So some of those things that maybe they didn't have time to do before, now they absolutely have time. They have an abundance of time to do some of these things, right? So, with that whole thing, it's kind of the same. I'm trying to create something that somebody could do on their own time. Now that people do have time and they want to do a side project, or, learn something new, whether it be piano, guitar, painting, drawing, a sport, people have time to do that at this point. And so I think I've seen a lot of people kind of reach out to different people and say, how can I get started in this? Or I've always wanted to do this, and now I have time, and now I can. So
that's kind of why I wanted to ask you the question too, because it kind of stems across, because everyone does have time now. Everyone's like working from home, and it kind of pushes us in the direction of the next question I was going to ask you, because being someone, and a lot of people are in this type of field where they see people one-on-one. That could be a trainer seeing someone at the gym that's now closed, and they can't do that, and they can't facilitate that same level of service. Like, how did going through this experience where everyone has to stay at home, you're seeing clients one-on-one, how did you adapt to that? And what was like kind of your strategy for someone else who's trying to figure out how this new working landscape we live in would work for someone who has that business or that profession where the one-on-one is really important?
So I think a couple of things with this. So when it started happening and everything started getting more serious here in the United States, I just decided to jump right into it. I had seen some other teachers say, we're going to kind of figure this out, and I might do in-person lessons and online and this kind of thing. And I looked to see how other people were working with online lessons. Right. And once I saw that it was a possibility, not just in the music industry, but in, a lot of business industries that had switched to going to Zoom and had going to that, I figured, okay, this might not be the most ideal thing, but it's something that I can do to just help everyone out. So I made the decision. I just said, we're going all online lessons. I'm not changing the payment or anything. We're just going to stick with it. We're going to go online. I have my laptop set up. I have microphones attached to my piano, and that's, another way with my audio engineering kind of helped out from that. And I was able to set up like a secondary camera above the keys. And so I just started doing it. And, you make adjustments along the way. Sometimes I figured, like this idea didn't really work for this online situation. I ended up having to buy a lot of my method books that I used as ebooks so I could do screen shares and write on them. So, I mean, you're going to find that there's ups and downs with everything. But I think if you always are trying to look to improve, and it doesn't have to be some huge improvement immediately, but maybe just start taking like one or two steps to improve or to kind of pivot and adjust. I think that was kind of what really helped me out. I didn't try to do everything all at once. I made the decision that I was going to go all online. And then from there, I just kind of started piecing things together, and it got better and better. And now, kind of here we are today. So
see, and that's the biggest thing for me. Just when I hear someone talk about how they adjust to something, it's like, I made the decision. It's like, we're going online. We'll figure out everything else. Right. But then you just figure it out all along the way. Where it's just like, what are we going to do? Like panic mode. Like, I need to see these people in my business. Like, how am I going to do this? It's just like, no, we're going online.
Right.
Hey guys, this is the plan. Like just taking command of it and saying this. And was everyone, I'm wondering if everyone was receptive to it, but at the same time, everyone's trying to, like during this time, have some semblance of normalcy. So
Right.
that is the semblance of normalcy, still doing that stuff.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and it wasn't like a resounding yes, we'd love
Sure.
to go online
Sure.
lessons and everything, but people were willing at least to go into it and say, oh, okay, I'm willing to do that. We'll see, what happens. But I think once everything really started taking off and people realized, this is how it's going to be for a little while, that, the music lessons were something that was important to them. So they were going to find out a way on how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so since I offered that option, people were, more than willing to accept it and just, kind of work with it until everything started to change.
I love that, man. So I have 2 more questions. One, really, one of them you kind of already answered. I typically ask, like, what's the most excited thing you're working on? And I think that's that online aspect,
Right.
It sounds like, in terms of creating something that gives more. Because, again, when you start helping people, it feels so good that you want to reach more people.
Right.
And that's why you create content. Same thing for me and anyone else out there who's delivering some level of value and transformation and whatever it could be to someone. So I'll ask you this question that I ask everyone at the end of the interview, and then I'll ask you where people can find you and connect with you online too, because I think what you're doing is amazing. And for anyone who's even just interested in like learning about piano, about classical music, dude, I listen to classical music every day. Do I know how to play it? No, but I love it. And it's like dude, it's so good for your brain.
Oh, yeah.
Like studying
Yeah,
and
there's
just
lots
like
of studies out there.
I will, whenever I read and this is just a side tangent, but like whenever I read in the morning, I listen to classical music. It's just like so soothing. And we'll talk about this offline because I want to ask you about some of these composers because they're just like great.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let me know. I got lots of recommendations.
But I'll ask you the last question and we'll
Sure.
wrap it up. So what today, and I think I already know the answer, but I still need to ask it because it's different for everyone and it's not asked in the best way. But what today still just really inspires and fires you up to just continue to do what you do? I know there's people who get burned out. I know there's people who are like, why am I doing this? But what continues to just keep, like, you've just been pushing and like you're making so much content. You're helping so many young people. What is that today, being in this space for so many years for yourself?
For me, and I have this word written, I have a vision board at home, as I'm sure most people in any kind of space do, but I have a vision board written at home, and at the top of it is the word legacy. And for me, it's all about the legacy. And, helping somebody else learn an instrument, it could change their lives. I mean, for me, even learning at 5, I had no idea what it could lead to, 23 years of playing, and here I am. But, I've taken students who started learning piano, say, first, second, third grade, and now they're in 7th, 8th grade, and they're really starting to, kind of get into the skills and really starting to enjoy it. And that's what makes it, awesome for me. I get to wake up and work with people and teach them a skill that I already love, and that I'm kind of transferring that love of the skill to them and showing them how, it helped me along through my life. So to me, it's all about legacy. And I've had people, I've had a couple of students go off to college already, which is crazy. And, who have reached out to me and said, I still play piano in college. It's just, they may not be doing music, but as a major or anything like that, but they just find it stress relieving.
Yeah.
Or they just enjoy doing it. It's something that they enjoy doing. So I just enjoy passing that skill on to people and just kind of watching and how, people run with it.
Mm-hmm.
You never know what it'll do for somebody. So
I don't remember. Actually, I do remember everyone's answer to this question, and no one has said legacy, which is, and maybe it's because we're all early in the game, but that like resonates with me so much too, because it comes down to, again, what's the bigger picture?
Right.
And like what Gary says, legacy over currency.
Yeah.
You could be the richest man in the world, but like you didn't do anything, or like what's more important? Is it the impact you made or the income? It's definitely the impact.
Yeah, and saying legacy, it's not even my own legacy.
Right.
It's just, having, being able to teach people something, it's almost better than being able to do it yourself.
The feeling.
Right. If I were to get up on a stage and do a flawless performance and, win some award, I'd feel great. But if my 3rd grade student who just learned to play their first piece by, early piece by Beethoven or something, and who got on stage and, had the courage to go on stage and play with no music and finish it and do a bow and everything, it almost makes me feel better
Yes.
than myself doing it. So, and I found that, and I just kind of rolled with that.
I agree with you 100%. And I don't know, it has to be a trait within people or it's something that grows because not everyone's like that. There are people who it's what's in it for me. But when you pass something on and you see someone succeed outside of yourself succeeding, that's you succeeding too. Like, it feels so good.
Yeah,
it's
the best feeling.
It's I totally agree. I just love that answer, and it's so true. So last thing, where can people find you to get connected? Robbie, let us know.
So all social media platforms. I don't really have a Twitter set up, but Crescendo, CRZNDO, on Instagram. On Facebook, on YouTube, it's Crescendo Music.
Okay.
So you can search for any of those things. Feel free to hit me up if you have questions about, you want to learn the piano, you don't know where to start, you're already learning the piano, you have some questions, you have a piano piece recorded and you'd like me to listen to it and give you commentary. I mean, I'm open for whatever. So, you can feel free to send me a message.
Awesome. Please, guys, check him out. I think you're doing some amazing stuff. And Robbie, thank you so much for coming on, man. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And that's going to conclude my conversation today with Robert Avril. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to go check him out on social media. Again, it's Crescendo, CRZNDO. He's doing some amazing things. And piano has always been something that was interesting to me. I love listening to classical music. I know I talked about that on the episode. But check him out. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't. Leave us a review. It helps us reach more young professionals like yourself. You ever want to get connected? YWR Podcast on social media, info@YoungWildandRich if you want to shoot us an email. Thanks again, and look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Cheers.